Good morning and welcome to the GETECH Group PLC Interim Results Investor Presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Richard Bennett, Acting CEO. Good morning, sir.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Richard Bennett and welcome to GETECH's interim results. Today, hopefully, I'm going to talk to you about three things. I want to talk to a little bit about GETECH for our new followers, about what we do and how we make our money. Talk about the interim results and talk, the bigger issue really is the refocused business strategy and what we see as the outlook for the business sort of over the remainder of this year and going into next year. So, firstly, I think the news that you'll have seen this morning is I've become acting CEO, and Michael Covington has become the chairman designate of the company. And I think, as many people know, the previous CEO left earlier on in the middle of H1. And after that, as my role as chairman was very much to do two things really. And that was number one was to make sure that we maintained business continuity, but number two, to really also undertake a bit of a strategic review of the business and ensure the company is focused on the right opportunities. And above all else, I think, to make sure the company got its costs under control. And after that review, it's decided for me to act as CEO so that I could really implement these changes, and for Michael to become chairman designate so that we can really maintain good corporate governance as we move forward. And what we're expecting to do is to formalise these positions in due course. So, for new people to GETECH, let me just tell you about what we do. We operate squarely now in the energy transition. This is a 1 trillion market at the moment for as we sort of transfer from the old oil and gas industry to a low carbon and cleaner energy future. So GETECH's history was very much providing data and services and expertise to help oil and gas companies find oil and gas. And what we're trying to do now, or what we are doing now, is utilising these skills and services to sort of find and work with people on finding new energy solutions, particularly around sort of the subsurface world where we actually have our expertise. So the mission for us is very much finding the subsurface resources that are vital to the energy transition. So I said, we very much work still with the oil and gas companies to help them, find oil and gas. That has been, the core business for GETECH for the last 30 years. It's the cash cow. It's what we really have to milk and make sure we get as much revenue out of this industry as we can, and use that money to help fund the transition of the business. And as we're doing that, we're adding new business lines, other things that are all vital to the subsurface. So one of the key areas here or the early areas is carbon storage. This is what is a necessary ingredient for blue hydrogen to really make North Sea oil and gas actually have a future, whereby particularly gas they'll separate the hydrogen from the carbon, and the carbon will be stored underground, and the hydrogen will go on to be used as a clean low carbon fuel, and thus extending the life of North Sea gas. We're also actively looking for geothermal projects around the globe. Geothermal is obviously a great alternative to using gas as a heating within business and for industrial solutions, and there's very much renewed prominence for people looking to explore for these global projects. And lastly, critical minerals. There is a huge market now for critical minerals. These are vital ingredients of the electrification of our cars and the industry, and vital for the energy transition, that we sort of discover the amounts of copper and lithium and cobalt and all these materials that are actually required to develop the business as we move forward into the future. And often these assets are actually in remote locations. So we're also involved in energy storage and the production of green hydrogen. And that was through our subsidiary H2 Green. And this, what the idea is there is it would allow companies to monetize these stranded or sort of hard to reach remote sort of assets. But one of the key things I think we've learned, we were beginning to learn at the end of last year, and it really came sharply into focus in H1, is the capex that's required to develop these type of projects that we're involved in. It was really, really quite intensive. And with the current sort of market conditions, with interest rates, people seem to be really delaying these decisions on capex. So one of the things that we've been doing, one of the things I've done, is to make sure that we actually are sensible in the way that we develop this business, and we're now switching to develop this business through partnerships. And I'll come on and talk about more of that as we go through the presentation. The other part of my strategic review is to really put Globe back at the center of GETECH. This is Globe is this sort of it's our geoscience data platform, and it's really been the core of the GETECH business. For the last 30 years, the teams have been collecting all sorts of sort of raw data, from gravity and magnetic and sort of Earth observation data. And using supercomputer, they've really stitched this into a global map, a global database of data that helps facilitate exploration. And beyond that, we then sort of use various sort of machine learning techniques to interrogate that and help people understand, sort of make use of that data. And we have a lot of geoscience experts that can then really help further interpret that and sort of help our clients sort of maximize that and use it to extract value in their exploration process. And really, I'm bringing sort of the focus of the business back around the Globe platform. And you'll see that very much in our revised research and development plan that we're actually implementing for GETECH at the moment. So we've really prioritized the teams to acquire more data, more Earth observation data. You may have seen it wasn't an RNS, but it was out on the news wires. Our relationship with Planet to actually bring more satellite data into the product. And what we're going to be doing with that is to make it more relevant to a broader set of markets. It's what we're doing, extending our sort of algorithm taxonomy to search for more minerals. So yes, oil and gas, very much the unconventional gas and natural hydrogen, white hydrogen. You may have also seen that as a press release from us over the summer, which got a lot of interest. Carbon storage, geothermal, and again, critical minerals, the copper, the lithiums, the cobalts, phosphates, and so on. But I'm also bringing into it much more AI to accelerate the research for these critical resources and minerals. GETECH was always using so a lot of computational work, and it's quite a step change to go from computational algorithms to AI. Where we were with our algorithms before, we were kind of distilling the expert knowledge into algorithms. And now we're actually sort of letting the computers use their AI to try and pattern match where there have been sort of mineral occurrences or oil and gas occurrences, and see if we can find the patterns and the similarities of where they might exist elsewhere in the world. It's quite early stages for this at the moment. It's very intriguing, the results that I think we're actually getting out of it. It's of great interest, and hopefully it's something we're going to be building upon, and you'll hear from me talking about that more over the coming year. But I think most of all, what most people are interested in is how do we make money? And we've got 3 ways that we're actually looking to make money. The first one is the core part of the business, the traditional part of the business, where we're working with explorers, large organizations that are exploring for resources around the world, oil and gas companies. Clients include people like Petronas and Shell. Minex, the mining exploration companies. We recently added Nitetsu to our client range, and you may have seen some releases that we were working on with projects with them in Peru, and geothermal explorers, companies like Evor. We also are then selling our services to what we term as decarbonizers. These are large organizations that are looking to achieve net zero, and we're helping them screen for various projects that are actually going to reduce their emissions footprint. How to actually do renewable heat from geothermal, carbon storage, green hydrogen, and so on. And the third area that we'll be sort of new. I think we've talked about it in previous meetings, but we're looking at assets, how to actually take a revenue share or participate in some of these projects. This is where we're now seeing H2 Green sit within the business, and we're looking at other ones that I will just come on to in a couple of seconds. So revenue from explorers, as I said, we're targeting large global explorers with our products. We're providing them the Globe platform, our data platform, our geoscience services in that. And that's the core part of the business. And we're continuing to really focus on the oil and gas companies, but really also sort of divest on that and bring into play the mining companies, the geothermal companies, the carbon storage companies, and all the other companies around the world that are now looking for subsurface assets that they need to make the energy transition work. We're also, how we're making money from decarbonizers. We're going out to these companies, very much looking at how to actually take them on a journey, really. The first one is to actually screen their sites so that we can look for what resources they have around them, particularly with geothermal is where most of the popularity is at the moment and most of the interest. And then take them on a journey to actually see, well, if we found a subsurface resource, how do we actually make it sort of economic viable? How do we take it into the feasibility and into the feed side of the business, the front end engineering and design? And what we hope to be doing is look at actually the implementation of these projects, so that we will actually be looking at actually developing these and asset managing these in the future. For those that followed our June, July last one, I was very much talking about a case study that we were doing for a large global FMCG company, where we just recently completed a screening of around 130 of their locations around the globe. So pleased to report that's still very much an ongoing project, and we're very optimistic that that's actually going to lead into more work, and hopefully that they're going to then actually be one of our first clients to actually go through this journey with us. And as we go through the rest of this year, I hope to be giving you more information on that. So looking at the asset development, this is new for us, and how we're restructuring the business to drive our way forward. We're actually looking at how we can actually participative equity participative model with what we're actually doing. So from GETECH's point of view, I think what we're very good at is we're good at finding projects, we're originating projects, but rather going off and looking at these large capex installations ourselves, actually working in partnership to go off and deliver these projects. So we'll be looking at development partners, finance partners, and operations partners to go off and deliver them. So this will allow us to actually retain our stakes within these projects that we're developing, but really reduce the current costs that we're associated with the development of these projects. So specifically, what that means for H2 Green is this is going to be effectively our SPV for green hydrogen projects. We're carrying on with the work at the Port of Shoreham. We're carrying on with Highlands Council. We're carrying on with SGN and Inverness. But we're looking to do this now in partnership with other companies, and I think you'll hopefully see news on that sort of sometime within H2 or early into next year. So very much, how do we preserve the asset value of these and actually grow those assets, but in a way that's actually consistent without having to go out and raise new money into GETECH at this point in time. I think some of the eagle-eyed people had also spotted that we've got a geothermal subsidiary now, and a critical minerals and a lithium subsidiary. And this is going to be the SPV holding companies that we anticipate putting our equities or royalties that we develop from these businesses, from the current things that we've actually got in our pipeline. And really the goal that you'll see from me, particularly a little bit in H2 of this year, but certainly going into next year, is to start adding lots of projects to these buckets, and increasing the value of the business with GETECH, either as the equity stakes or royalties and all these things that will help build up the balance sheet or bring in sort of recurring revenues as we move into the future. So let me talk very briefly about our interim results. I think as I started off, as sort of after the strategic review, what I've been really doing is now refocusing the business, as I said very clearly, I think in the presentation, around locating the subsurface resources and how to actually get those into a development methodology. Working very much with Globe to make sure that we can extend the range of products and services or resources that can actually find underground. And key to that was that natural hydrogen was one we announced. We're very much working on things like lithium and phosphates and copper and cobalt and so on. One of the big things here, and I think it probably should have been in bigger letters, is reduce the cost base by 2 million by really changing the way that H2 Green is actually working within the business. I think people that saw the cash balances at the end of the year last year will know exactly why I've been through and actually done that. Very much about taking the business into getting it to a place where in this economic environment we're heading to actually get ourselves to cash flow positive in the very near term as quickly as we can. And what else do we have? Just reading my bullet points. And very much the other thing that you'll have also noticed, hopefully have noticed, is we've been investing very much in the sales and marketing, particularly PR, and really trying to sort of hone the sales team and structure the sales team so that we can go after these different verticals that we've got in the business now, maintaining our growth in oil and gas, going after the critical minerals, going after geothermal, and going after our decarbonizer market. And to deliver that strategy, as said, I've looked at very much taking the role now as the acting CEO of the group to really drive through these changes. And Michael Covington is stepping up to be the chairman designate again, so we can really maintain that strong corporate governance within the business. So in numbers, the turnover to the revenue to end of June was 1.9 million. That's down from 2.7 million of the same period last year. But the period last year also included a 700 million transfer payment, which was an exceptional revenue item that actually came in at that time. So broadly speaking, the revenue in terms of Globe and data sales was pretty much on par with where it was last year. The loss is 2.7 million against 0.7 million for last year. And again, I think sort of you can really see in that why we've actually gone through a restructuring and rechange and refocus of the business. Pursuing these capex businesses within H2 Green was becoming very, very expensive. So of that 2.7, 0.7 was related to restructuring charges. And as I've said, I've taken 2 million of actualized costs out of the business. That has been things like reducing headcount. It's been closing down the Edinburgh office and really getting the business streamlined around actually heading to make itself break even and focus around the core activities of the business, the Globe, the data sales and so on. On the good news front, and I'm sure that was sort of looked pretty ugly maybe, or not the best of news above, but on the good news, we've got 4.4 million of order book, which is sort of roughly the same as where we were last year. At the end of the period, we had 2.2 million of cash on hand at the bank, and we still have the asset of kits in house, which we are very much proceeding with the sales. I think it's fair to say this challenge of closing property sales with these high interest rates at the moment is challenging, but we are very much in process and driving that to try and bring that to a conclusion and release that money back into the business. So the outlook just on the order book for the rest of this year, we know we have 1.4 million of revenue for H2 and 1.5 million for H1 of next year. The annualized recurring revenue was 2.6 million, and this is based on a new Globe sale that we won in H1 and 5 new software customers that came in H1. and some other software sales that have actually will be recurring sales, which was around the sales of the unconventional gases. So from an outlook point of view, very much focusing the business completely now 100% on the energy transition. From a business point of view, I'm pretty confident I've now got costs under control, and we'll still make sure that we do sell kits in-house. As I said, it's a challenge, but we will actually get there. I'm really investing our time and resources now into the technology platform, back into Globe, really to make it making ourselves very useful and valuable to the people that are in the CCS, the critical minerals, the geothermal space, and how we can use AI to leverage our data and make it even more meaningful and quicker results for these people. Very much focused on the explorers, the oil and gas, critical minerals, and the geothermal, as I said, focused on the decarbonizers that is there, and added that new product line, or the new line for us, new sort of value line, if you like, which is the assets. So how we'll actually now look to be an equity participant or get royalties from the projects that we're actually originating within the business. I promised everybody that I would increase news flow, and we've really been investing in the IR and press process for the business, and that's beginning now to get traction. Some of you may have seen in the mining press, there was quite a nice feature on the work we did with the mining company Netsu for looking and searching for copper in Peru. We have the work that we've been doing with the unconventional analyst of finding these unconventional gases, and some very nice work. Some pieces got written. I think it was the Telegraph and the Guardian picked up, amongst others, our work in the search for natural hydrogen or white hydrogen or geologic hydrogen of many names, and of how that may be. So that brings today my conclusion to the investment presentation of the interim results. So thank you.
Richard, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Richard, as you can see, we have received a number of questions throughout today's presentation. Could I please ask you to read out the questions and give responses where appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Brilliant, thank you. So of the questions, the first one, have you received government funding for Inverness yet? The answer to that is yes. We've accepted the Bayes grant. It's on the basis of spend and reclaim. So we're in the process of working that one through. And to achieve that, we're also looking at working with partners to develop that project site, so that all the cash flow doesn't fall onto GETECH. Next question. Your share price continues to be hit hard now at an all-time low, down 50% this year. The market clearly has little faith in your ability to meet profitability and not run out of cash. What are your plans to restore this faith? I think the fight back really starts here. I think what we have very much identified and why we've made a number of changes across the business was, number one, to stop the cash going out of the business, and number two, to really focus on the areas where people are actually spending money, how we can make money to do that. So the spending review, taking 2 million out of the business, getting the costs really firmly under control, is very much been taken place, and very much now focusing the sales teams on revenue generating opportunities as well as asset development opportunities, and out of that we expect to see news flow, and as that goes into the share price, that I really will hope will drive the I don't think it's going to take very long with some of the potential transactions to really to move that share price again, to move that forward. Can you update on kits in house, and when do you really expect to dispose of it? I think anybody that's following the property market will know that these high interest rates are making it hard for people to get mortgages. There remains significant interest in the business, mostly from including our neighbour that's looking to actually acquire the whole of the building so that they can extend on it. It really is very much work in process with Andrew and the estate agents. And I think, we're certainly not holding out for some crazy valuation. We really are just trying to find a way to clear that, to move that property on. And for two reasons, really. It is one, we want the cash back in the business. And secondly, I'm really trying to pull forward a cultural change within GETECH to make it much more tech focused. And I think we need to be much more back in the centre of Leeds, back in the heart of the innovation with the university to drive these things. So it is an absolute priority to get that sold. You mentioned in the results that you would look to both revenues and project participation. How do you see this working? Well, I think how we see this working, this is, again, part of what came out of very much a change to the business. When the history to GETECH is we're working with large oil and gas companies. They have huge budgets and they pay very good fees for their data. The new people, the emerging companies that are looking for subsurface assets, the mining companies, the geothermal companies, the carbon storage companies, they're all well funded, but they don't have the same level of budgets as the oil majors. So what we're doing with them is we're coming up with more creative business models that are actually a mix of both revenue and carried interest within the product. And that carried interest is being negotiated on individual bases. So we're looking at some cases equity, some cases it's a royalty, and so on. I think that's going to be very much key to the business. The balance I'm trying to strike is bring revenue in that's certainly going to cover our costs, but make sure that we have a share of the value of it going forward. And that will actually hopefully build up the balance sheet. And then as we progress with the development of the business model to bring in recurring revenues into the business and make GETECH a much more stable company as we move into the future. H2 Green only had 120k of revenues in 22 and losses increased to 1.3 million. Does the company regret paying 1 million for an unproven company that was only incorporated 6 months prior to GETECH purchasing their initial stake? I think what do I think about H2 Green? I came into H2 Green after this transaction the companies after this transaction had happened, and clearly at that sort of point, going back 2 or 3 years ago, there was a lot of enthusiasm around what hydrogen could be doing as part of the energy transition. At that time, the government was very much focused. We had the energy white paper that included a large, I forget the number, of megawatts that the government wanted to see green hydrogen production going into the UK system, but it was substantial enough for many people to look at business models too. But as we've seen, there's been quite a change of heart from our current government at the moment. They're not nearly as pro green hydrogen as maybe the Europeans and the Americans anymore with the current change of government. And there is no clear line sight of customers of where it's going to. So it's very hard business to actually, I don't think there's very few green hydrogen companies that are getting to FID. So it's not so much a regret, but I think it's really much a case of realism. I think hydrogen will be part of the energy transition. What we have to do, the secret for us, is to make sure that we can actually do it within our means. And so what we've done is, what I've hoped we've done is struck in a really good balance where we'll continue with these projects, but we're going to do it in partnership. So we're not going to be on the hook for all of these development costs, directly on the hook for these development costs and these CapEx raisings as we go forward. I suspect, my personal view is hydrogen comes in and out of fashion over the last 20 years. With the change of government, I think when you hear Ed Miliband talking about green hydrogen, I suspect green hydrogen may well very much come back into fashion again. So again, I think taking this pragmatic approach of slowly developing it in partnership is the best option for shareholders in making sure that we can actually get the benefit of any upside to this market as we move into the future. A number of questions here about sort of Graham Cooley. What was that? I think so. Again, I know I've probably sort of caused, and I apologise, caused some confusion in the last investor meet. We say we very much expected, or we were quite optimistic, we were moving forward in a very specific direction of travel. I think when I came in as sort of executive chairman in the middle of H1, we could very much see the problems of the challenges that were there for H2 Green. And one option was to use the skill sets of a number of people that were around us to see if we could spin H2 Green out into its own public market vehicle. But I think by the time I think people were very optimistic that we were hoping that the markets would open and you'd see more fundraisings coming back in, and it might be possible. But as we progressed, we didn't have to progress very far to really say, and you can see it absolutely clearly today, still not just June, July, the markets, just are not closed. They're closed for IPOs. It's the worst IPO market in the history of it. And Graham and the other associated people were all very pro being in the public market, not within a private company. So I've changed things really to make sure that I protect the value of these assets for GETECH's shareholders, and basically live to get the upside of this another day. So, as I said, I think energy policy may well pivot again, and these assets will likely become much more valuable as we move forward into the future. And it will be the time to look at sort of spin outs or public offerings, a good period into the future from now, certainly not in the current market conditions. Should we attach value to Shoreham and Inverness given the exclusivity periods are very short? Yes, I think so. So I think, as I said, I think the hydrogen market is uncertain. You look at what Rishi Sunak has been saying about low carbon transportation over the last few months. It's confused. There's many headwinds in that marketplace. With interest rates where they are and inflation, projects like this are just not getting to financial closure at this point. And I think everybody on all the way through this, from the GETECH people to the Shoreham people to the Inverness people, they all know what headwinds we're facing, and they're all very pragmatic in the way that we're actually looking to move these projects forward. So yes, I'm certainly not writing off the value at this point. I'm optimistic that we will find a way to bring that value back to shareholders. What is your cash runway based on your reduced spend, and do you need to sell kits in the house to avoid running out of cash? I think Cenkos very helpfully published their research on that this morning. As I said, we are in difficult market conditions at the moment with our interest rates and inflation and so on. So there's never any certainties. But where GETECH is, where we're operating, these are growing markets. The hunt for critical minerals is huge. The hunt for geothermal is huge. We've got a really healthy, strong product pipeline. We just got to get out there and convert it. So at the moment, we've got no plans to raise cash. I'm really trying to work through on controlling costs and sort of doubling down on our efforts on sales. And that, I believe, brings last question. Following the strategic review, if you put H2 Green into administration, are these parent government guarantees, or will losses at H2 Green be ring-fenced? There is no intention for H2 Green to go into administration. As I say, it's becoming like a holding company for these assets, and we're going to pursue the development of these assets within partnership. So hopefully that will clear that up. So a few more questions have popped up. So how much costs are you adding to sales? It is the only area where we're investing. I've invested. We're increasing our sales headcount, and we are increasing our IR and PR budgets. We've been getting a lot of sort of traction within the IR and PR, and I think that in the modern world, that's a really much more the bigger driver of sales leads. Consequently, I think sort of GETECH was spending, sort of approximately about 120,000, a bit more maybe, on attending exhibitions and things like that. That budget is really being slashed and really being reused in terms of sales headcount and IR and PR. So thank you. I believe that brings all the questions to conclusion. Thank you.
Richard, thank you. And I think you've addressed all those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. Before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, could I please just ask you for a few closing comments?
Well, thank you. Well, hopefully, the really big takeaways that I hope I've given to everybody is that we're really out there to focus on the subsurface market. This is all growing market sectors, which is quite unusual for where the world is at the moment. I'm very much going to be advancing our technology to expand how many minerals and things and subsurface assets that we can find, and trying to bring AI more into focus within the business. Very much reduce costs within the business, and still very much the main goal is to get us to a point of being sort of cash flow break even. So from my point of view, I've really stepped into the role as CEO, and I've done that because I'm actually really confident in the future potential for where we are actually heading. Yes, there's headwinds with inflation and high interest rates, which makes it very hard to actually sort of financial close on some of these big projects. But by having that partnership strategy in place, I think that's going to make that really irrelevant to us. So yeah, I'm overall very, very confident within the business. And as we start building up our list of sort of new customers and adding sort of assets and revenues into our SPVs, I really think you'll very, very soon see that reflected into the share price, and GETECH will be very successful as we move forward. So thank you.
Richard, thank you for updating investors today. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of GETECH Group PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. Good morning to you.